everybody. Welcome to this episode of All the WrestleManias. I'm your co-host, Tim Hackman.
And I'm your co-host, Rich Sigwald.
And as you probably have heard, hopefully, this is our last episode under the banner of the All the WrestleManias name. It's been a great run since December of 22, more or less. And we've put a lot of episodes out there under this name, but we're moving on. We're getting a new brand with the Wrestling Archives. So starting January of 2024, that's what's going to be our new name. So make sure that you update your links and your podcast apps and that sort of thing should find us automatically, because it's not like we're changing the pages or anything. It's just going to be new names. So, but if you don't recognize the name, take a look. It's us. We're still here, and we're going to be pumping out a lot of fun wrestling content as we always do. We thought we might take a little bit of a look back at 2023 and the really kind of fascinating year.
This has been an insane year for us, and insane year for wrestling.
Yeah.
We just started doing a little podcast where we watch old wrestling and talk about it and kind of make fun of it and put it in social context for modern times and stuff like that too. We call out the racism, the xenophobia, and why that works so well in professional wrestling and stuff like that. But we started getting a little deeper this year.
Yeah.
We started having guests on. We started talking to real life wrestlers. That's insane to me.
That's great. Well, and I appreciate that we've done some more scholarly stuff. We started that in 2022 with Dr. Jess. That seems forever ago. And we had Dr. Mark Willett on this year. We also did the wrestling panel here at Old Dominion University, where I work, in the spring with some real-life wrestlers and some scholars who write and research about wrestling. So that was very cool. That was a great way to kind of combine both my academic and entertainment interests. That was cool. So we, 24 episodes this year, including this rundown, so roughly 2 a month. We had kind of scaled back. We were trying to get one a week, and then with life and work and kids, illness, the ongoing collapse of our society, once every 2 weeks seems about right.
Yeah, we're trying our best to maintain that right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not the best podcast partner sometimes. I'm a little hard to get a hold of, but we're working on it. And the download numbers have been solid. I mean, we're up 35% versus the same period the year before.
Yeah, and we became global this year too. We had at least 1 month to where our downloads in the United States were equal to the downloads just from the United Kingdom.
Nice.
But we've actually been getting downloads from Hong Kong. We've had downloads from Saudi Arabia. We've had downloads from Argentina, I believe. We just had a download the other day from the Ukraine. So we're on all the continents, people. We had a download in Egypt, I believe. So we're on all the continents. We're out there. We're broadcasting, and we're just sharing our love of pro wrestling. And so either keep on mapping your VPNs through these other countries to make us look awesome, or if you're actually in that country and you're downloading us, thank you so much.
Yeah, shoot us an email. We're at new email is wrestlingarchivespodcast@gmail.com. We also, of course, have our socials are going to be updated for the new name. So our Twitter is going to be Wrestle Archives. Instagram is _wrestling_archives. Facebook, again, will be changing names. Currently, we're called Hot Tag with Rich and Tim because we got scammed and had to change our passwords, and I felt very boomer. I fell for that one.
Oh yeah, that's bad. We teach that stuff, and here we are falling for it.
And then the very first one that hits us up, we're like, oh, this is legit.
This is the end of the world. This is it. This is it. We're getting ripped off.
We're getting banned.
Yeah. WWE has found us, They're hunting us down for IP infringement. This is the end of the show. We need to rename. And then we didn't really. That wasn't happening at all.
It was a scam.
But
So shout out to our buddy Jerry at VCW for actually like talking us off the ledge and be like, hey, you know what, guys, we get like dozens of these a month. And actually, since that first one, I'd say we've gotten at least one a week. So scammers, knock it off. Go do something useful with your life.
I think we got 2 a day during the Thanksgiving week. It was god awful.
And they're all the same. They're all very apocalyptic. It's like, you need to verify your website because we think it infringes copyright and we're going to shut it down immediately, and you're violating your terms of use, and we're going to come to your house and take off your extra foreskin and with a shrimp fork. And they're very intimidating. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, this is a cease and desist delivered through Facebook Messenger. Very official. Very official.
Which should have been our first. Which should have been our first clue. But hey, we're learning. We're growing.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So I will also say that again, the podcast continues to grow. 9 of our 10 most downloaded episodes of all time came out this year. So it's not like our episodes have kind of a long tail, but it's not like the winners are the ones that are sitting there from 2 years ago. So all but Wrestle War 91, which came out in 2022, all of the top 10 episodes came out this year. The WrestleMania 39 preview continues to be our best performer. WrestleMania 3, which we covered with the guys from Turtle Wars, which was a lot of fun. The Birth of Hulkamania episode, AWA Super Sunday 83, Clash of Champions. Our buddy Boar made it in at number 6.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark Willett is number 7 this year. Actually, not this year, all time. Survivor Series 95 at 8. Wrestle War 91 from 2022. And then number 10 was WrestleMania 27. So that's pretty cool.
Did Dr. Jess get dethroned?
She did, yeah.
Wow. I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice where she was.
Because, Dr. Jess had a huge spike of, a ton of downloads from the state of Tennessee one day. And then she was like the Pink Floyd of our episodes, our Dark Side of the Moon, where this hid in the top 100 for 30 years. And it was she had a download a week at least.
Yeah.
Ever since the release of her episode. And it was just longevity and just crushing everything. But I didn't notice that. I just assumed that she was still number 1 just because why would I assume?
I wonder if she spoke at a conference in Tennessee or something that week.
I don't know. They Googled her and found her.
Yeah. So, and we also kind of diversified this year. 25% of our episodes dealt with WrestleManias. We did a current WrestleMania preview for 39. We did 4 of the ones in sequence that we've been working our way through. So we did 26, 27, 28, and 29. And then we went back and did one retro WrestleMania. That was number 3 with the Turtle Wars guys that we had covered on the blog but hadn't done a recorded episode for it yet. So those were fun, but we branched out and did 8 other wrestling shows or pay-per-views. There were 2 from the AWA, 1 from the NWA, 1 from WCW, 2 old school episodes from WWF, plus this Tuesday in Texas, Taboo Tuesday, and a Survivor Series. We connected with the Turtle Wars podcast guys again, Jeff and Andy. They were a lot of fun. We did a show for them
again.
We should get them back. They were cool. I think we scared them a little bit when we went on their show and talked about wrestling.
Probably. We scare a lot of people when we do that.
Yeah, that's true. We had Dr. Willett on, of course. And then I think, our most fruitful partnership this year really has been this connection with Virginia Championship Wrestling, which, again, kind of grew out of, them wanting to do a show at Old Dominion, me connecting with Jerry, and then it just sort of blew up from there, and it's gotten a little ridiculous, to be honest. So we've had, of course, Jerry Stefanitsis, Jonathan Elliott, who's their talent coordinator and one of their tag team champions, had the Golden Pinky Society, who were the former at the time and now, again, the current tag team champions for them. Mr. Excellence Brandon Scott, Logan Easton LaRoe, The Boar, and, of course, their beloved commissioner, George Pantis. And then all of that led us to the big one, I don't know what you want to call it, the grand poobah of them all, David motherfucking Crockett.
Yeah, that was incredible. I've been extremely thankful of our partnership with Virginia Championship Wrestling, and it's a lot of fun to work with them. They're pretty cool. They're pretty chill. Jerry every once in a while gets a hair up his ass, but we can keep him in line. He's okay. We can deal with him. But yeah, they've really been great to us, and we hope they feel that we've been great to them by getting the word out about their shows and stuff like that. But we really appreciate the help from them, and we will always pretty much be willing to talk to any talent they want us to talk to. We will talk to anybody. So yeah, keep us in your thoughts there, VCW.
Yeah. We've hopefully that's been as productive for them as it has been for us. I did go to George's retirement show a couple weeks ago here at the Masonic Temple in Norfolk. It was great. It was really nice to see so many people turn out to bid him farewell. I met his daughters, who are both really delightful. Met some other members of his family. Talked to David Crockett and got an autograph for you. I have to deliver that to you.
Thank you.
And they were giving out signs that said, on the one side they said "Thank you, George," and on the other side they said "Jerry sucks." So I'm kind of mad I didn't grab one of those. But also they kind of owe us money, because I'm pretty sure we had the first Jerry sucks sign.
Yeah, the original Jerry sucks sign, and and George's daughter sent us a very nice message thanking us for our interview of her dad and stuff like that. Yeah. So if you haven't listened to our interview of George, it is an absolutely fascinating conversation. He is a wonderful man, a delight to listen to and to talk to, and has stories about telling stories. And he is very charismatic and very open about his story, which is just very refreshing to hear. And also David Crockett is the same way. He was a delight to talk with, and also very open and honest about what is happening with him, and I think, and what happened with Jim Crockett Promotions. And I think with him, we're all aging, and with him getting up there and, losing his brother fairly recently, I think David is really wanting to get out there and tell the story of his family's company before it gets swallowed up completely and disappears. So there's still legacy lingerings of the old Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA showing up in the WWE, mostly as brands for the premium live events on NXT. They've done Starcades, they've done Halloween Havocs, they've done they're doing War Games still. All of those things, came out of Crockett, out of the Crockett promotion, out of Mid-Atlantic, and I don't think David wants people to forget that's especially now that WWE is now under ownership of another company. So now so Crockett was bought by Ted Turner, who then sold that product to WWE, and now WWE has been bought. This legacy of historic wrestling has been swallowed up, and I think David's wanting to make sure that the story is out there, and that the real story is out there and can't be manipulated like we've talked about WWE doing to other historical figures in pro wrestling. So
yeah, and I think that's why it's important to sort of get some of this history down. These things sort of function, these podcasts sort of function as oral histories in a way. I met the widow of Lou Thez, of all people, at the last show. Her name's Charlie. She's, again, delightful. She was significantly younger than him when they met and married, and so she's very sharp, very engaging, and we had a really nice conversation about kind of the legacy of professional wrestling, the historical and cultural value of professional wrestling, and I think we're going to try to maybe work together a little bit and see if we can do something to get that stuff into, say, the archives at the university, where it can be available to future researchers, because I do worry a little bit that these things are being lost, and they're in the hands of private collectors for the most part, which is, at least they're safe, but then they're also kind of unavailable, to the researchers. So anyway, just something I'm thinking about. It's kind of churning in my brains If anybody who's listening is into that kind of thing, give me a shout. Easy enough to find. So, let's see. Where do you want to start? We watched a lot of wrestling this year.
We did. We did.
We watched at least 14, 15 pay-per-views on top of our various interviews. And then we watched a lot of like modern wrestling too, weekly television shows and premium live events and pay-per-views and whatever you want to call them. But I thought maybe we could first kind of begin with talking a little bit about some of the favorite shows that we watched in the context of the podcast here. So of those 14 that we watched, do we have any favorites, any worst ones, and maybe some highlights from those? Do you want to start? Do you have a favorite show from this year's?
I think the most fun show that we watched was the ECW Barely Legal from 1996. I think
I totally forgot that on my list, actually.
I think that show had such insane energy that we haven't seen in any of the other shows that we've watched this year. Because even when we watched that in that War Games match that we watched with the Four Horsemen and stuff like that, that was last year. So that's the last time that we watched a show that had like a super, super hot crowd. So I think that's going to be up there for me, just because you legit had no idea what was going to happen in that show. Someone, I don't even think everybody lived going to that show. Someone probably died in that audience, and we have no idea.
That whole show was bonkers. It was great. The other one that I would put in that kind of same category, it was so big and overblown and also unpredictable, was the AWA Super Clash 85. That was, first of all, it's just a monstrously long show. It's a little too long, honestly. But there are moments in that one. There's some really tremendous matches, and there's some moments of chaos, and it's all in such a weird venue. It's in that ballpark, and it seems like the whole production is like barely held together with duct tape. Everything about it was great. It's like super low budget and shitty and amazing.
Yeah, that one, especially with the chaos that it ends with Stan Hansen and what's his name? It's Rick Martel. Oh my God! Like they never even made it to the ring. I don't think. Like it was just a fight, and then like the crowd was getting in on it. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The other show that I would throw in there, and it's the other AWA show, was that Super Sunday from 1983. And I think that was mainly just because the crowd lost its collective mind when Nick Bockwinkel gets the dusty finish on Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And you see that Hulk Hogan and the Hulkamania there is just ready to explode. It's just a ticking time bomb, and it's just waiting for something to happen, and it just wasn't going to happen in the AWA. You had to wait another year for him to be over in WWF and to beat the Iron Sheik and have that insane moment of Hulk Hogan beating the Iron Sheik. But there's just such anticipation in that AWA Super Sunday show that makes it just an absolute blast to watch.
Yeah, we did a lot of Hulk Hogan digging this year. We started with that AWA show, and then we did that Madison Square Garden show where he beat the Iron Sheik. He was on another old school one, I think, that we watched, right, when he was still wearing white.
Yeah, we watched the 1979, his Madison Square Garden debut against Ted DiBiase.
Right. And that one was decent. And then, of course, we watched Bash at the Beach 96, which is his momentous heel turn, which is, maybe one of the top 10 sort of most important moments in pro wrestling from 80s or 90s. So we've never really, I don't know. I mean, I guess you're always a Hulk Hogan fan, right? Like some people of our generation, you're never like really gonna stop.
Even if you hate Hulk Hogan, you like Hulk Hogan.
You like Hulk Hogan,
really, It's really weird. You can hate him, but you actually like him. You that jerk Hulk Hogan. Oh, well, you like him actually. Like you're just Bobby Heenan Heenan
Yeah.
on Hulk Hogan. That's all you're doing. Speaking of Hulk Hogan, my friend in Texas, my catfish friend that I've never met, sent me a giant Hulk Hogan bobblehead for Christmas.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Picture soon to come on the socials, but it is. I bet you it's almost 2 feet tall. It is
Holy
a
shit.
huge. It's a huge bobblehead. I've never seen a bobblehead this big. I don't know what I'm going to do with it.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so it's another one for the collection. It'll join my background here with the Undertaker bobblehead that's hanging out up there and the Bret Hart glasses and stuff. So we'll, yeah, I
wanna
can't,
see
I
that.
can't
Yeah.
wait. Yeah.
Did you have any nominations for the worst shows we watched this year?
You know, it's funny that I put the Bash of the Beach under favorite show, and you put it under worst show watched, and I think it's both.
Yeah.
If it didn't have that Hulk Hogan heel turn in it near the end, that show is a dud. It's just a stinker. But I think it's a stinker because everybody on that show is nervous. Like if Hulk Hogan comes out and at the end and turns on Macho Man at the end there, what happens? If the crowd could have very well have stayed with Hogan and turned to NWO face and made Macho Man heel. Like that's how much sway Hulk Hogan has. That there's a very strong possibility that Hulk Hogan stays the good guy no matter what. And the WCW crew, the anti-NWO crew, end up being bad guys out of that. And so I think everybody was just so on edge about what that show was going to end with that everybody held back, and their performances were just meh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to recommend that show, again, except for that ending. And I do appreciate the way that they kind of build to the thing throughout. Like Gene Okerlund is always, he's going back to see if he can figure out who this third man is. It's, and he's like, I hear voices. He sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
And it's, it kind of hams it up a little bit and builds and builds and builds. And that ending is really, it's worth watching, because when he comes out, the crowd goes nuts. They're like, oh shit, Hulk Hogan's here. He's going to save the day like he always does. And then he, of course, does the exact opposite. And it's remarkable actually to see a crowd like not know how to react to something, with the exception of that one fan in the middle, in the front row.
The dude with the ECW shirt that just wants to watch the world burn, that is so happy.
Yeah, that guy's just like a giant middle finger right in the middle of the show.
It's so great.
But everybody else is like legit stunned. It's very unusual to see a reaction that is so authentic like that.
Yeah.
Especially anymore. So the other one I had as the worst was part of our 2 for Tuesday show. We did this Tuesday in Texas, which was all right. And that was an old one. That was like right after WrestleMania, right before WrestleMania, the very first one. And then we did Taboo Tuesday, which was a sort of cyber-themed one with Coachman, and it's fucking awful. Don't listen to the episode. You'll have a good time listening to the episode. Don't watch that show, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fascinating stories about what Edge was supposed to come out of that with and stuff like that. But like, supposedly the fan voting in that show was authentic, and so that's that. They just had endings determined upon how the audience voted online. So if that should give you a sense of how that show is. That like it's mid-90s, and is it mid-90s or is it early 2000s? I can't remember, but either way, it is early days internet.
Yeah,
and nothing compared to what we have these days. And so you can almost hear America's dial-up modem screeching to cast these votes.
It was 2004. It's actually later than I thought.
Yeah. Okay. So they're using their DSL lines.
Yeah.
To vote, but yeah, it's not an enjoyable show per
Mom,
se.
don't pick up the phone.
Yeah. I'm voting for Shawn Michaels. Don't pick up the phone right now. I gotta vote for Chris Benoit. So.
Our younger viewers have no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
No.
I had a roommate. I think I probably talked about this on the show. I had a roommate in college who would he played Diablo and those some of those games.
Oh,
this
yeah.
was the late 90s. So every night he would
StarCraft.
Yeah, he would like hook up to the modem, and like the phone would just be off for like 4 or 5, 6 hours straight every Sunday night, and that was his thing. So it's fine. I didn't have anybody to call anyway. Any other stinkers this year? There wasn't that many actually.
The Hulk Hogan 1979 debut at Madison Square Garden, that card was kind of lackluster.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think also these WrestleManias from this that we watched this year, for the most part, very mediocre, very tough to tell the difference between.
Yeah.
None of them really stand out. The only things that are really standing out are the bad things, like the extremely overbooked and very choreographed Triple H versus Undertaker in a cell with Shawn Michaels as the referee. Like, it's theatrics. You can see them moving through blocking to make sure that they're close to the camera and the microphone so that you can hear their dialogue. It's
Yeah,
that's
not good.
Those are the only things that really stand out from those shows. But I will say that one of my favorite matches of that we've watched this year for the podcast came out of WrestleMania 27, and that was Undertaker versus Triple H. Just normal. That match was really good to where like, and then the end where they actually are acting like the Undertaker might actually be dead, and they're checking him for a pulse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's too much. But that match was spectacular. Like, Undertaker, like, unconsciously chokes out Triple H. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just grabbing at whoever's near him and putting in a chokehold and winning.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually a pretty good one. Considering it has two people that I'm not all that crazy for. That's a pretty good one. One of my favorites, let's see. I don't know if I had any from WrestleMania, actually. I had multiple ones from that AWA Super Clash. And they were for a couple different reasons. So one, that Rick Martel versus Stan Hansen thing that we already mentioned. It's not really a match. It's like a couple of bulls on speed and steroids crashing through a bunch of chairs and audience members. There's also a Freebirds versus Road Warriors match on there that is like, it's classic mid-'80s AWA, like violence and drama and crowd involvement, and it was really awesome. And then the last one from that show, it's not so much the match, it's just more of the aura of the whole thing. So you had the kind of the young studs versus the old guard, and the old guard was Ray Stevens, Nick Bockwinkel, and Larry Zbyszko, all of whom are phenomenal. And on the young guys side, you have Greg Gagne, which he does not belong there, but the others are Scott Hall and Kurt Hennig, who are just two like golden gods. I don't know how old they were there. They look like little babies, but they're
babies. Yeah.
They're incredible. So that was a really good one.
Yeah, and we have to mention that we watched Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat for this,
of course,
this year with the WrestleMania 3 episode with the Turtle Wars guys, and basically gave them a lecture as to why that is the greatest wrestling match of all time, possibly. Yeah. But then outside of that, we did watch some other great ones. I put down it's a women's tag match, which is unusual to make it on this show, but it was the Wendy Richter and Joyce Grable versus Judy Martin and Velvet McIntyre from the AWA Super Sunday 83 show that we watched. And that match, you can see that Wendy Richter is a superstar and is going to be as close to a female Hulk Hogan as you're going to get out of that match.
That was an awesome match. Yeah,
the rest of them just worked hard, and they were tough, and they were stiff, and they were getting in their licks, and just, man, they were tearing it up. They did not leave a corner dry in that match. Like, they tore everything up. I couldn't believe it.
I wish the AEW women would watch that match and take some notes.
I just wish they would watch that match and just reproduce it. Just step for step. Just do it again.
Yeah. Let's see what else. So you mentioned Steamboat versus Macho Man. I also had Flair versus Steamboat, the 2 out of 3 falls match from NWA Clash of Champions 6. That's a barn burner. Is that the last of their three?
I
Or is
think
it the
that was
middle?
the number two. I think that was
Yeah, I
number
think
two
it's the
because we
middle
watched
one.
them out of order.
That's right.
We're smart.
That's why I confused myself. And I really like Brett versus Diesel from Survivor Series '95.
Yeah.
That's an all timer. That's such a excellent use of Diesel's size versus Brett's sort of technical abilities, and just the storytelling is phenomenal. And Bret Hart is, you guys know how we feel about Bret Hart.
And that was the very first time the Spanish announce table was crashed through. Was when Diesel powerbombed Brett through it, and that was the very first Spanish announce table break. And I was there.
Never forget.
Never forget.
You really liked that the Japanese match from which one? Which one was that? What show was that?
That was from the ECW Barely Legal.
Yeah.
The Blue World Order Japan versus the Great Sasuke, Gran Hamada, and Masato Yakashuji. I probably just butchered that last name, but here we are. And that match had everything in it. It is possibly the best 6-man tag match I've ever seen in my life. And it's funny, a reel on Facebook just came up in my feed like yesterday saying, how many people remember this match? You should, if you don't, you should go watch it. And it's like, wow. And it's that match. And I, again, was just like enamored, and I watched that reel like 5 times in a row, just because it is so good. They do aerial tactics that make sense. There's no standing around and crowding around, so you can dive onto the 5 other people. There's no real bullshit happening. It is wrestling, and I don't want to call it its purest form because there's a lot of showmanship in it. It's a Japanese style match, but there is brutality, there is acrobatics, there is everything for everyone in that match. And I will die on that hill. I will tell people to watch that ECW show just for that match.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And it comes out of nowhere, too. I think that's what made it so special. It's just like you're watching along and you don't really expect it, and then all of a sudden, like, holy cow. And you're like, oh, 6-man tag, bunch of Japanese people I haven't heard of. And then it starts happening in front of you, and you're like, oh, Jesus. And then your life changes. It's great. And then the last one I think we both liked was that Hulk Hogan versus Iron Sheik match. Again, just because of a couple different things. Iron Sheik's nuclear level heat in anything he did in that period. Hulk Hogan's equally nuclear amount of being over with the crowd. The drama, the tension. It's a pivotal moment in wrestling history. It's the passing of a torch from the sort of old school shooter to the young stud guys. It's the looks over the technique, maybe, and it's comic book storytelling at its finest, and it's a very important moment, and it's not just it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's some of the wrestling we watched for the show, and then of course we did a bunch of interviews this year. More than, I think we maybe only did 1 or 2 the year before. We talked to Dr. Jess twice.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it, right? So
right. Yeah. This is the year of the interview. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, I like it. It's a lot of fun, actually. I feel like we're learning how to do it as we go, kind of learning a little bit. So I thought maybe we could just talk a little bit about some of our favorite moments from the interviews, and I can start. Maybe I really liked talking to the Boar. I kind of flipped my shit when we got on camera and he's sitting there in his house with like a t-shirt on and his Boar mask. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I was like, he's doing this. He's really going to wear this mask for a podcast interview. This is incredible.
Because I wasn't sure, and because we had told him, we can do video or not if you want, and nope, he's all in. And then I also really he was a cool guy. I liked him. He really he kind of lit up when we sort of flagged some of his obvious influences, Kevin Nash being a big one, obviously, but we talked about a few others, and he, I feel like he kind of appreciated that we were paying enough attention to see, some of the some of the folks that he also enjoyed. So that was cool.
Yeah, and it definitely showed that he's a bit of a wrestling encyclopedia. So we got to get him back on and get him talking some more. That is for sure.
Yeah, because he was like, I forget what was something about. He was like, well, if you go back to the show on this show and then this year and blah blah blah, that match is where, like, he knew it. He knew the shit backwards and forwards. So, yeah, I'd like to watch some maybe some old WCW with him. Maybe watch. I don't know. Maybe watch some more Kevin Nash. Something. We should do that.
Yes, for sure. Boar, come on again. Anytime, please.
Rich will write you another theme song. He wrote a special one.
I did. I wrote one for Brandon too, but I never got to play it for him.
Oh, well.
That's all right.
You could send it to him for a Christmas card.
Maybe. But now that he's working as a good guy, I don't know. I might have to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did enjoy talking with Brandon. Brandon gave such a great, real perspective and insight into how you become enhancement talent for the big guys, and really shared how important that is, and just even if you're just what they call a jobber, you've made it in the business. If you've even reached that level of performer, you are doing really good for yourself.
Yeah, because think about, hundreds, thousands maybe of guys and girls who are out there laboring away in the indies, and basically doing it for gas money and a tuna sandwich or whatever Austin used to talk about,
right?
And
bag of raw potatoes.
Yeah, the opportunity to get called up and perform on live TV like that is really cool. And we talked to both Brandon and Logan LaRoe also has done some of that work on AEW and etc. So that's very cool. Also, for their interview with Jerry Stefanitsis, I liked talking shit to Jerry. He deserves it. He's a jerk face. But you liked that his favorite wrestler was...
He loves Doink the Clown, and so I'm right there with him on that. Doink. And we were both bonding over original heel Doink.
Yeah.
That is the sweet spot. Once Doink started becoming kind of a good guy and a fan favorite, but it also wasn't Matt Bourne at that point, so... Meh. Give me the Matt Bourne Doink the Clown that will make babies cry. And I'm all in. And he'll do the stump puller finisher, because you don't see that move much. Doink pulled it off, and that was a lovely moment between me and Jerry, and like the only moment between me and Jerry, because otherwise I was giving Jerry the red ass during that whole interview.
Yeah. Because he's a jerk face, as we established.
Well, yeah, I mean, he hit George with a kendo stick. How can you hit George Pantis? Like, how can you hit him? I don't understand.
I wouldn't even talk slightly crosswise to him.
No.
He's like America's Greek grandfather. Everyone loves George.
He really is. It really is.
It's kind of like if Jerry can't even, find it in his cold black banker's heart to love George Pantis, then what is he even doing? Like, he should just...
Why should he live?
You know what? His wife told me, actually, at the last show, that she said, Jerry sucks. I'm like, that's what I've been saying. So she knows, too. She has to live with it. So.
Well, I bet she knows.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. So we talked to him. We cleaned our keyboards and stuff down afterwards. It was all right.
Yeah.
But then, of course, we talked to George, and he had a lot of great stories. And then, of course, David Crockett was a highlight. And he had a bunch of different stories. I know you had some that you really liked from him.
I really enjoyed being able to tell him, quote unquote, in person, that how I grew up watching his product, and it was his wrestling company that got me into watching pro wrestling before WWF, and that it was his company that made me and my mom bond over pro wrestling. And so that was a really nice feeling to be able to share that with someone and open up. It's been a part of my therapy to open up about my feelings with things, with people and stuff. So David Crockett helped me move forward in my therapy.
Well, that's nice.
But also the stories that he told and the insights that he provided about like what happened with Jim Crockett Promotions and the WCW and the Ted Turner deal, and how important it was for him to be a family business. And that's, that was kind of a real perspective into the type of person that he is. And I think, we're with WWE now no longer being a family business, I think it's almost the end of times it's the real end of times for that kind of wrestling promotion and stuff like that. That like wrestling was very much a family business, and it's really weird to think of it that way. But, there was the Gagnes, the Crockett's, the Von Erichs, the McMahons. They were their families, and they carried on that tradition through the years and from generation to generation of running the companies. And now that that's gone completely from pro wrestling, that's another good reason to talk with David Crockett and get him to share his stories. Plus you get to learn about Ric Flair wearing nothing but a robe, his title belt, and what the good Lord blessed him with.
And smacking people with his dong, I believe was.
Yes, very Johnson. Proud of his Johnson, I believe, was the direct quote from David Crockett. And then in the interview with George revealed that he was at that party at the Baltimore Marriott. So we need to get more stories out of George in 2024 about how the hell does George Pantis, America's grandpa, sweetheart man, end up at the Baltimore Marriott with a naked Ric Flair.
We need to get him back on for sure. He'll do it. He like I say, he's delightful. When we were kind of coming up with the questions to ask him, I hesitated a little bit on some of the ones that you had put down about sort of the end of the sale of WCW and kind of the way that it all transpired, because I wasn't sure, how much of that would still be kind of a sore subject or how cagey he would be about it. But honestly, it was very refreshing to talk to him, and he was just straight up. Like he didn't pull any punches. He didn't talk in like code or subterfuge or anything. He really just kind of told it the way that he remembered it and the way that he felt about it, which I thought was really valuable. So that was cool.
I had put those questions down because I felt that we should ask them, but I also was like, well, if he's being a little cagey, we can keep the conversation light with him, and that's fine. But he just suddenly was totally willing to just be like, yeah, I hated Ted Turner. Like, okay, well, let's get into that subject.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
He kind of had some things to say about Tony Khan and Billy Corgan too. So anyway, if you guys haven't checked that episode, give it a whirl. It's a hot one. He was great. His wife was delightful too. Actually, I met her at the show. Yeah. She and my wife hit it off. So maybe they'll invite us to their house so we can hang out down there. We also met some other wrestling folks this year. We met Mike Chioda, world famous referee at the event here at ODU back in the spring. We met Nyla Rose at the Alexandria show. I know you went to an autograph show and caught a bunch of folks you were hoping to see.
I had a long list for that autograph show that I went to, but then the plans changed because I first went to Lex Luger, and he had a picture of him while he was in the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair, Tully, and Arn Anderson and J.J. Dillon. And I looked at my little pamphlet of all the people that were there, and I was like, hey, all these people are here today. I think I'm going to get all of their signatures. And I completely pivoted. I did not get Ted DiBiase that day like I had planned to. I did not get Brian Cage, and I didn't get Nikita Koloff that day either. And I just pivoted to getting all the Horsemen, and then I got Luke from the Bushwhackers, which was kind of sad because that show was only like a week after Butch had died.
Yeah.
But I got Luke to sign my copy of the biography of the Bushwhackers that you bought me. I told him about getting licked, and he was a real delight talking to, even though I'm sure he was not feeling up to being at that show that day.
Yeah. Does he have like a serious accent? Like.
Oh yeah.
Still.
And he still pretty much walks around the same, which I'm sure is just from years of abuse and the hardcore style wrestling that they did before they were the Bushwhackers. And he still looks the same too, which is kind of weird. He just looks more pudgy, but that's what happens when you get older. But
it's hilarious to me that they were like, like the New Zealand Terry Funk, like basically, and like And I mean, even you can see on that one thing that we watched. I don't think it was this year, but the what was it? It was a grab bag thing, VHS.
Smack 'em Whack 'em. Yeah,
you can see that their foreheads are just like a nightmare of blade scars from those days. And then for them to be at that because they were like 40 or whatever when when they kind of made that push in WWF and switched them around to become these like kid friendly like goofballs, basically. It's hilarious.
Which is really the only way I knew of them until
same.
I started seeing all these bios and people talking about them like they were the most terrifying people you ever wrestled besides the Road Warriors. And then like, are we talking about the same team? Like what? The guys that just like run around with their partner in a headlock and headbutting people that way, like I don't, like using your partner as a battering ram and it's like licking kids on the way to the ring and swinging your arms like a maniac. That team, they're the scariest team you've ever seen in your life. Like, oh, okay.
I forgot. I also met Sergeant Slaughter this year, and he was great. And I met our buddies in Demolition again. I sat behind the table with them for a little while and talked about Wahoo McDaniel, and they're such cool guys. One of these days, Bill Eadie, it's happening. Bill Eadie or Barry Darso, or both. It's going to happen. George, I think, can make it happen for us.
Yeah, George, make it happen for us. We would love to talk to those guys. They are some of our favorites, and especially Barry Darso, especially with how he made like so many gimmicks of his career work, from Repo Man to Crusher Khrushchev to being in Demolition. Like he's had one of the most amazing careers in pro wrestling, I think.
So I got at that show, since I already had the signed Demolition, duo from the first one where we had met them. I got a Crusher Khrushchev one that Mr. Darso signed, and I got a Masked Superstar one that Bill Eadie signed. So added to my collection. Yeah, and Magnum TA, I guess I met this year too.
Yeah,
that was like January, I think, up at Hampton High School. He's pretty cool.
I met Tony Atlas at the American Legion.
Right.
At my dad's American Legion post at a little indie show there. And he was just kind of sitting there alone. Like, I don't think a lot of people in this... It was a very young crowd, surprisingly, for an indie show. So I don't think a lot of people knew exactly who Tony Atlas was. But he was very kind and very nice to talk with and chat with, and signed a really cool photo for me. And then at intermission, he got in the ring and gave a weird promo of, Back in the Blue and stuff like that. I was like, oh, all right. But it was like at church. It was weird. It was a very weird vibe that was coming out of that. But I mean, he also knew his audience. He's at an American Legion post, so he's not going to get up there and say ACAB or anything like that. So,
I mean, I don't know.
So
That's too funny.
But it was a nice time, and I've had a lot of fun this year going to indie wrestling shows. It's something, while I might not have had a lot of time to watch like the big brands and their products, I've been able to make some time to go to some indie shows, which is actually more enjoyable in my opinion, and a lot more supportive of the business, because if you don't pay the admission to go see these guys work at your fire halls and your rec centers and your American Legion posts, you don't see them developed enough to go into the big time. And so you could miss out on a Hulk Hogan or a Roman Reigns or an LA Knight kind of guy.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it as well. It's and you get up close and personal with the action, in a way that you don't necessarily get in that, that I've been to the WWE Raw, right, at the Scope or whatever, and you're a mile away from anything, and most of it's on video, And whereas, at the VCW shows, you walk around during intermission and there's the guy that just wrestled, or there's the guy that's going to be on later, and they'll talk to you and shake your hand and take a picture and sell you an autograph or a T-shirt, and it's fun. And like you said, you get to support people much more directly, not support just a giant corporation and hope the profits trickle down to them. So.
Yeah, and you get to see the Boar in his mid-'90s WCW fanny pack collecting cash. He's cash only. He doesn't want the government breathing down his neck taking
That's
money
right.
from him. So
hey,
cash only for him.
Let's maybe not put that on the air. We don't need to get our buddy.
He said it in his own interview. Come on.
That's true. We don't need to get him. I'm sure he pays all of the appropriate.
I'm sure he pays enough.
Sales tax, yeah. All right, so let's see. So beyond the shows we watched and the episodes we did, I thought we could just kind of run through some wrestling news this year. It was a very eventful year. I think wrestling definitely has these ups and downs. I think we're in a huge up period right now. WWE, of course, is doing record numbers on all of its shows. It's signing these deals, multi-billion-dollar deals, and I'm not a I don't want to be a stooge for a capitalist enterprise here, but it is fascinating to see something that every 10 years or so somebody will declare that professional wrestling's dead, and it's all it's dumb, it's lame, it's over, nobody's paying attention, and then it comes roaring back and it finds a way to make itself relevant again. So this year we saw Vince McMahon kind of leave and then come back again. With a cartoon villain mustache, and
almost not a Me Too moment almost for Vince, but somehow he survives that.
Yeah,
so.
pulled it out, for no pun intended. And then of course, speaking of family businesses, they sold it to basically a massive media conglomerate, Endeavor, and same company that owns UFC. So now Vince McMahon and Dana White are I don't know, whatever. I don't know what you want to call them, in the same venture. That's weird.
Which honestly has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've seen WWE borrow a lot of stuff from MMA to try and make itself seem more real. The whole concept of tapping out in a wrestling match, that's all from MMA.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen wrestlers jump back and forth between MMA and pro wrestling, including Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, and Ken Shamrock is an early example of that. Ken Shamrock actually started as a pro wrestler, then went to MMA, and then came back to pro wrestling. Ronda Rousey, Steve Blackman, Dan Severn. So this kind of stuff has been a long time coming, and honestly, while we're talking about WWE borrowing from UFC has also borrowed from WWE of injecting small storylines to build heat going into their matches. You would see they'd have little vignettes of stories of real heat between the guys that are about to fight, but then after they just kick the crap out of each other, they're hugging afterwards. Or they're shaking hands before the match and stuff like that. So there's always been a little bit of show there. And they've been borrowing from each other forever, so they might as well be in the same company now.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Then they're in the same business, more or less, right? They're selling violence or simulated violence for money. The other things that have boosted WWE this year is Cody Rhodes making his return to that company at I guess it was the Royal Rumble, right, in January, and then going to WrestleMania, and everybody was so certain he was going to get that title from Roman Reigns, which looking back is kind of silly to think that he was going to happen that quickly. But I got suckered. I think a lot of us got suckered. But just
I threw my phone.
Yeah, no, it was infuriating.
I can't imagine in this day and age me getting so invested in a pro wrestling story line that I throw my phone. I know too much. I'm too smart.
They got us.
Just like that Facebook scammer, man. It's like the Facebook scammer. WWE just fed us and ran us right down the road of look, Cody, this is Cody's destiny, because I don't know if you knew this, but Cody's father is Dusty Rhodes.
What?
And we
How's this
just
the first time I'm hearing about this?
we just fell right for it, and my phone went across the room at midnight that night, and I couldn't believe it.
We want to be fooled. We want to be fooled.
Solo Sikoa, man, that jerk face, God, he gets you with that Samoan spike every time.
Over on the AEW side, they kind of fumbled CM Punk returning and got him fired, and everybody said he was washed up and done. And of course, look where he is. Another just absolute ratings blitz for WWE. I think, you and I are both been watching AEW since the beginning. I think we're both rooting for them. We want there to be an alternative to the big company. I just want it to be better. It's bad, and it's getting worse, in my opinion. I don't know where they go from here. It seems like every opportunity they get with some actual talent, they shoot themselves in the dick. They don't build anything. They blow it off immediately. They let the people do just fucking stupid things, and they get themselves hurt. Dante Martin let a fucking lucha jackass the Canadian Destroyer him through a table, and he turned his ankle around backwards. Stop that! Stop that
rough.
shit!
That was rough.
Stop that shit!
Yeah, that's just like a weekly taping, man. Just take it down a notch.
Yeah, what the hell? I think that may have been a Ring of Honor show, actually. Now that I think about it,
yeah.
So it wasn't even on regular TV. People had to see it on the internet. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I am rooting for AEW. I'm rooting for every wrestling company because I think wrestling is a great, incredible art form and important for our culture for if anything, a violence blow off and a distraction from the real world shit that's happening.
Yeah, for real.
You can get the satisfaction of actually seeing a good guy win because you don't see that in the real world. That's true. I just... the CM Punk thing, man, they had a gold mine on that. They could have built, if the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega knew how to really do business. This is where I'm going to sound like Jim Cornette. If they really knew how to do business, they would have recognized that you take that legit heat and you put it in the ring. 100%. And you let them, and every week, no violence, every week you give them 20 minutes to talk and yell at each other.
Yeah.
And you got it. And that gives CM Punk time to heal from the foot injury that he totally was not ready to come back from, which is the reason why I think that whole thing was a work, was that he wasn't ready to come back and he was still hurt and he needed more time off. And so he gave himself a way to get time off. But then, Punk also then can't control himself, and he gets in a fight with Jungle Boy Jack Perry of all people in England at Wembley Stadium, and now he's out. And now, probably the moment his non-compete ran out, he could show up over in WWE, which, AEW did nothing but prove that CM Punk was still a draw, and therefore WWE was like, well, then we'll pay him money. And I'm sure he just doesn't go in the same room with Triple H, and he's fine. They probably keep CM Punk in an isolation chamber in the back, so he can't talk to anybody. It's like, okay, now it's your turn, and they open up and put blinders on him so that he can't see anybody else going to the gorilla position and going out, so that he just goes from his little isolation pod to the ring and back. That's it. And so he can't engage with anybody. He can't get in real fights.
I watched that pay-per-view where he came back, and it was on a Saturday night, and so it was opposite Collision. And I have no idea what the fuck's going on Collision. I did watch it on the DVR then eventually, but I was watching it, I'm like, this buries AEW so completely that it's hard to really see how they're going to come back from it. Who do they have to compete with that? They have a bunch of these indie guys that nobody outside of their 850,000 people who will never stop watching that show ever know or care about. You know, who are they going to sign? They're not gonna, Brock Lesnar? No. They're not going to lure away somebody like a Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins. That's never going to happen. There's nobody out there who's like tearing up the independent circuit. Now maybe they could like flip somebody from some other area of celebrity, like like the same way that like Logan Paul has kind of made it a big deal. Maybe they get like, I don't know, whoever the next Vin Diesel is to come over and be a wrestler or something like that. That might, but otherwise I don't know where it's
I mean, why would you leave WWE for AEW at this point? Because WWE you already work 1/4 of the matches that you would work over in AEW.
Yeah, and with people who aren't going to hurt you.
Right, and you have the Performance Center that makes sure that you're properly trained and you're in line and in step, and WWE doesn't screw around, and so you might not have as much creative freedom as you would in AEW if that's what you really want, but also you're not going to get Canadian destroyed through a table and have your neck bent the wrong way. Like your knees aren't going to bend the wrong way. You're not, like in WWE, these injuries are freak accidents. And, I think, like in the situation of Big E, whatever that dude's name that like decided to do that spot on the outside of the ring, he should have been fired for that.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary. Anyway, I don't want to get all on a tangent there, but like, why would you jump? Why would you jump ship unless WWE has fired you and you're desperate to work and you still have a draw? But then at the same time, what they're going to do is they're going to do what they did with Bryan Danielson. They give you an awesome match for the title against Kenny Omega. You go for the time, and then they just bury you over time. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets buried over in AEW unless you're Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks.
Yeah, and they don't. We've talked about this before, but they have entirely too many people on their roster to actually have folks appear in a consistent and effective way that actually builds towards anything. Like when you've got that many people, all you can do is basically let people have appearances. It's Cannonball Run. It's just like, here's this movie has 100 celebrities in it. Like, okay, how long are they on screen? 14 seconds each.
Yeah, I mean, but I'll counter you with that. I want you to sit down and bring up on the Peacock some of the World Championship wrestling clips, wrestling episodes. They're 2 hours long. They're filmed in a studio with Tony Schiavone and David Crockett. Mm-hmm. Promo match, promo match, promo match, promo match, and it's engaging. The matches are fast paced. The promos are completely ad lib, as David Crockett was explaining to us, that they're completely made up on the spot. They're just told where the story needs to go, and you will not see a more engaging wrestling show in your life. Bring them up. You'll see all those old Ric Flair clips that you always see going viral. All those clips that like no context Dusty Memes uses in their videos. You'll see them all there. They're all there. You got just do yourself a favor and start watching some of that stuff and see what that kind of stuff was. And that is the reason why I fell in love with the NWA's new product, is because it's very close to what that was. NWA is now even strayed away from that a bit, which is why I've stopped watching them for the most part too. Yeah. But if AEW could do something like that, and it's 2 hours, it's totally engaging and engrossing, and they have all the talent and all the skill there. They have Tony Schiavone, who was on the damn show, right there to tell them exactly how to do it. But as David Crockett was telling us, they have all this experience and this brain trust happening of years and years, hundreds of years of man hours of professional wrestling experience that is not getting shared because no one is asking the right questions. When you have Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Sting, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, Jeff Jarrett, Ric Flair on your roster in the back, and your champion isn't sitting down with them and asking questions of and reviewing tape with them, what are you doing?
So since we're covering the sort of wrestling news and kind of current wrestling, I thought we could just hit a couple of highlights, some favorite performers and favorite matches from this year. And I know that you said I know that you haven't had much opportunity to watch. So I was just going to flag a few. Maybe you've seen some of these. Maybe you didn't. I know we talked about WrestleMania 39 and the three-way with Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre. I thought that was a phenomenal match. It was.
Yes.
I rarely ever like the three-way matches, but that one actually was really great. Gunther also had a really cool feud with Chad Gable on Raw, and those two had a couple of excellent matches. Basically, anything Gunther does, I'm there for. I'm into that guy.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And his a guy I always think of as his counterpart, because he had a couple of absolute just bangers with him in NXT, is Ilya Dragunov. He's still laboring away over there in NXT. I don't know if he's going to make the jump. You know, he's a smaller guy, but he's super dramatic. He's super. I don't know. He seems to work stiff, but he doesn't seem like he's hurting people. Anyway, so just this weekend, actually, at NXT Deadline show, he wrestled Baron Corbin, and it was a slobber knocker. Like, it was like, I thought somebody's going to get murdered. And Ilya, the thing I like about him, he's really good at getting beat up, and then but then making you believe that he can still power out. And I think
he fights from underneath. It's really good.
Yeah, and so he pairs really well with somebody like Gunther, obviously, and with Corbin. But he also had some really good matches with Carmelo Hayes this year, who's much more his size. On the women's side, WrestleMania 39 also had Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. Those two are great, really athletic. Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest from Money in the Bank was like more fun than it had any right to be. Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, I think just because of how hooked we all were.
Oh, God.
Totally bamboozled. And on the AEW side, I'd say Danielson and MJF had a really good match at Revolution, I think it was. FTR and fought Juice Robinson and Jay White. They did a 2 out of 3 falls on like one of the earliest Collision. I think it's like maybe like the 5th episode. That was really good. And the more I see of Juice Robinson, the more impressed I am. I didn't really like him at first because he's got kind of like crazy Fraggle eyes and hair, and he's got a voice that sounds like I don't know, somebody who smokes crack out of a helium tank. But he's actually really good. He's really athletic. He moves around really well. He's a big guy. Like, he's bigger. He's deceptively large. So those are some of my favorites. I don't know if you had any others that you paid attention to this year or that you remembered.
Brock Lesnar versus Cody Rhodes, I thought was excellent.
Oh, that was a good one, yeah.
Especially with the build with Brock repeatedly breaking Cody's arm.
Yeah.
And then that match had looked a lot like another match that we had watched this year that was a young Cody Rhodes versus Big Show. It had very similar vibes of Cody trying to knock down the big man, just trying to get through. But instead of just being overly large, which, I mean, Brock Lesnar is, but Cody also had to deal with Brock Lesnar being ridiculously strong and ridiculously angry. And kind of use that anger that Brock had against himself, which was excellent, like storytelling in the ring, which you don't get a lot these days anymore, and excellent like ring psychology happening in that match, which we don't see much of. But that was that match I had flagged along with Cody versus Roman Reigns, is because, God damn it, they told a story and suckered me in. You sons of bitches. Damn it.
They got us. That Brock versus Cody one also had Brock hardway and himself on the ring post or the turnbuckle or whatever it was, and splitting his head open. That was cool. You don't see that too much anymore.
No.
So I think they did that on purpose. So they snuck one by him over there.
Yeah.
So some of those matches featured some of our favorite performers, who are sort of current this year. We both really like Cody, Gunther, of course. We're both big MJF fans. Who else was on your list from this year?
LA Knight, man. This is the rise and rise of LA Knight. Yeah. My boy. Hagerstown, man.
Let me talk to you.
So, I so am happy that he's found something and it's going well for him, because he was a standout over in the NWA. Apparently he was excellent in TNA, and now, even though he's probably in the twilight of his career at his age, he is being a superstar. And these people that are saying that he's nothing but a rock ripoff can shove it up their butts, because he is totally unique and a special guy, and I will mark out for him any chance I get.
No, he's great. And I think I told you my wife won't stop saying yeah. Like,
yeah.
We're not even watching wrestling. She'll and she says yeah for something, and she'll follow it up with yeah.
I'm still trying to get the kid to do it.
Oh,
still working on him.
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh no, I want him dropping all the wrestling catchphrases.
You also have to teach him to say "my wife."
My wife,
like Borat. I really like those guys. I like LA Knight. I mentioned Ilya Dragunov. He's really good. Juice Robinson. On the women's side, Rhea Ripley is really a standout for me. I don't have too many others. Charlotte Flair has only been kind of around this year on the WWE side, so I didn't put her on the list. She's always good.
I think her time is coming to an end. She's been around for ages. I think we got to put Cody Rhodes up there in one of the performers of the year. Every single match he has, I think he is telling the best story in professional wrestling right now. I know that he's repeatedly saying, "Did you know that my father was Dusty Rhodes?" But it is a compelling story because Dusty Rhodes was so good, and he is latching onto that, and he is showing that he can tell a story like Dusty can, but in a more modern way. And he is relating to fans, ironically, way more than he was able to in AEW. He had lost the fans in AEW. And I don't know what happened there. I don't know why. I think it was just because, one, I think he painted himself into a corner with the whole thing of like, if I lose this match, I'll never challenge for the championship. And then he lost the match. But I think not having to run the company, because he was a vice president over at AEW, and just being able to be talent at WWE is actually something that he's thriving in, and he's able to really tell his story and show how much he's developed from those days of old. And he had that insufferable documentary come out about him.
So bad.
God,
so bad.
He is insufferable in that, but that is the documentary that makes you realize that all of the WWE wrestler biographies that they do nowadays are all a work, and they're all part of the story, and all part of them developing a new form of kayfabe. This is the year that kayfabe has come back. And it's just a different type of kayfabe, to where like social media, the documentaries and streaming and all that are all part of it, and we're all suckers for it. And why I was so convinced that Cody Rhodes was going to win at WrestleMania 39 that I threw my expensive smartphone across the room in rage when Solo Sikoa jumped over and screwed him over.
I think maybe you sort of touched on something here, and I think part of the reason I don't think he was so over in AEW is it's a much more cynical presentation. It's always sort of nodding and winking at the whole premise of professional wrestling, whereas on WWE there's still this sort of at least veneer of kind of like earnestness, right? And Cody's really good at being earnest. He talks like he wants you to believe what he's saying. He wants to talk about things like family. And so when he was on AEW and he was doing that promo about he was fighting the boxer guy from Britain, whatever the fuck, and he did a basically promo about how he solved racism with his black wife and daughter. It came across as too hokey for the sort of the context, right? And I think, the fans sort of made fun of him. Whereas maybe with a little twist or two, that kind of thing would, I think, have totally gone over in WWE. Maybe a less personal version of it, but it would have been like a Disney version that would have, again, sort of had that sheen, kind of the same way the documentaries all have that sort of like veneer of a high gloss finish, always aware that you're looking at the image of the person, not necessarily the real person. So anyway, that's just my off the cuff.
Because like WWE's product is a lot like the Marvel universe, to where like they've built an entire universe where these super athletes, these superstars exist in, and they're telling stories within that between all of these superstars now. And while I wish they had more matches on their programming, they've got the storytelling back.
Yeah.
AEW has no storytelling. But that's because when they started AEW, and it was Cody at that press conference that was like, we're not going to have good guys and bad guys. We're going to have win and loss records that matter. And then they ignored that.
Yeah.
They threw that right out. People were coming in at 1-0, challenging for the championship. And that's something that kind of like UFC did too. But like, it didn't work. That doesn't work with pro wrestling, because people know that pro wrestling results are predetermined.
Predetermined, yeah.
And that they know that it's an athletic display to a predetermined finish. And therefore, where's the excitement in that? The excitement is the story that's being told and the why they're fighting and stuff like that. And if they're only fighting because they're ranked number 4 and they're ranked number 5 for the championship in contendership, no one cares.
Yeah.
Because you can already tell who's supposed to be on the rise and who's going down. You know, it's not like in boxing or MMA to where like you have the second and third contender face each other to get a shot at the first contender. Like. Yeah. Because you don't know who's going to win that. In pro wrestling, the audience knows that someone knows who's going to win this match. And therefore, you need to tell a story to cover that. Right. And WWE is doing that, thus me throwing my phone at Roman Reigns. And, you know, fans that go to the WWE shows are completely in it. They are sucked in. But at the same time, I just finished rewatching that Wrestlers documentary, and Al Snow at one point says, look, they've got legit heat happening. The crowd is booing. Nobody boos anymore. And no one does boo at a WWE show anymore. They cheer for the good guys, they cheer for the bad guys, just in slightly different ways. And that kind of takes the heart out of it some for me. But, you know, at the same time, the storytelling is there. They're telling a great story right now with Seth Rollins and CM Punk. They're telling this great story that Cody Rhodes is going to be coming back around. They're going to bring it full circle, and by WrestleMania 40, he's going to be facing Roman Reigns again, and he will win this time. It's just a matter of right now, are they going to tell the story by way of CM Punk winning the Royal Rumble, or is Cody going to win the Royal Rumble 2 years in a row?
No, it's interesting. And I think, as we sort of mentioned, Cody jumping from one company to the other has like pointed up the differences in the presentation and in the whole look and feel and everything about those two. So it's been a very interesting time, I would say. All right, so we want to kind of wrap up this episode, and I don't want to end on a down note, so we'll do the down, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit about what's coming up for 2024. So I did want to just take a moment and do our in memoriam for 2023. We lost a lot of wrestlers and wrestling adjacent folks this year. Some, after long lives and careers, some people really kind of cut down way too soon. Some folks we've already talked a little bit about on here. Bushwhacker Butch, we already mentioned. Let's see, who else do we already mention? Joyce Grable from that women's tag team match. We mentioned already. Jerry Jarrett, one of those, family guys. The Iron Sheik. Lanny Poffo, of course, who was Macho Man's brother. Superstar Billy Graham, who was, one of the sort of the proto Hulk Hogan, I would say. Also one of the first guys to get super into steroids, and then also one of the first guys to have a lot to say about it afterwards. And I think he actually did a lot of good after, because of his own bad experience. Guy played off as a joke a lot, because of his gimmick. But Mantar passed away this year. The hardcore Texas wrestling legend Terry Funk, one of the greatest of all time. He's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. Passed away this year. Darren Drozdov, young guy who never quite, he got there almost, and then not quite. Another one cut down entirely too soon. Tragic losses. Jay Briscoe from the Briscoe brothers. Similarly, Bray Wyatt. Just really some really sad stories this year. Again, I don't mean to bring folks down. In the sort of old timers categories, Adnan Al-Kaisi, we saw as General Adnan. He was often teamed up with the Iron Sheik. He was at a WrestleMania or two. Adrian Street, somebody we actually haven't seen yet on any of the shows we watch. We should maybe seek out his stuff. I know that he worked with Cornette. He was sort of a flamboyant type, sort of an Adrian Adonis kind of, sort of pretty boy, maybe kind of effeminate. He played up the ambiguity for sure. Let's see, Peggy Lee Feather. Some wrestling adjacent folks who showed up at WrestleManias that we've talked about: Jerry Springer and Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman. And then some maybe more obscure folks you may not know. Emile Dupree, who was the father of Rene Dupree, but who was a noted wrestler in his own right. Billy Two Rivers, who worked with Jim Crockett Promotions. We thought maybe David mentioned him, that he had worked with George Becker as a tag team. And Jeff Gaylord and Lumberjack Pierre. That's all we had on our list. And of course, if we missed anybody, we apologize. We did the best research we could. So thoughts about any of those folks? Anybody that you want to?
I talked a bit about when Jay Briscoe died. That was a real heartbreaker and really hit me, just because I had met him a couple times and seen how well him and his brother connect with fans. It's a rare thing to see. When we went to the first Ring of Honor show that we went to, I talked about how when we were leaving, we saw there was this just huge pack of people on the grassy lawn by the arena right next this there, and you peek into the center of it, and there are the Briscoes posing for pictures and signing autographs, and no charge, just signing and taking pictures, smiling, laughing with fans, letting them hold the title belts and stuff like that. They seemed to have a genuine love for the sport and the art, and they had a genuine love for their fans. And knowing that one of them is no longer here because of just an absolute tragic car accident. Luckily, his children, who were also in the car with him, were okay. But losing Jay was definitely sad. Darren Drozdov too. He's a sad loss, but he never recovered from suffering the power bomb that paralyzed him from D'Lo Brown, and that really also put a kibosh on D'Lo Brown's career too, just because it was such a bad botch all the way around. Superstar Billy Graham, it was spectacular in the ring, a flamboyant personality, but also extremely outspoken on the treatment of wrestlers and how they should be respected and treated as employees and stuff like that as well. So he was up there with Jesse Ventura in that matter, and was willing to sacrifice his career over that too.
Yeah, he I think we've talked before on here about that little documentary 350 Days, and where they interview a bunch of wrestlers about the life in the territories and days on the road, and his segments of that movie are absolutely riveting. He's just a magnetic presence and a very assured speaker. He's super knowledgeable. He goes on at one point at length about sort of the way that steroids destroy your body from within, and you can tell that he's speaking from experience. He's like, well, it sucks leaches the calcium out of your bones, and then you have to get this part, and then you find that you need spinal surgery like I had, and this year, and he goes on and on, and you can tell he's been through it, and he really, like you said, he didn't shy away from that. Jesse Ventura was kind of like the the GoBots version of superstar Billy Graham. He was really kind of the knockoff a little bit, and he never quite got there in the ring, but he had a much bigger career outside of the ring. We're huge Iron Sheik fans. Both all-time heel, and it's been fun to see his sort of late career social media surge and him getting kind of the respect as a legend of the earth, Bubba. I wasn't terribly surprised to see him go. I know he had been in poor health and he was really getting up there, but anyway, so that's the year in review. Did you have another one?
I was going to talk a little bit about Jeff Gaylord, just because it's another tragedy. He was a guy that was so close to getting there. He was represented by Downtown Bruno, and he was so close. He was in the USWA, the WCCW, the UWF, worked with Bill Watts there, and he made a brief appearance in the WWF, but, he just couldn't quite get there, and eventually was arrested for bank robbery, for committing 2 bank robberies, and he got paroled, but then he went out and robbed the bank again. Probably needed money, and the reason why anybody even knows that he passed away was that he was homeless at the time when he died, and was found dead on a bus stop bench in Inglewood, Colorado.
That's awful.
It's just a sad story, and I think it harkens back to the stuff that Billy Graham and Jesse Ventura were talking about, of like equal fair treatment and proper treatment of professional wrestlers as a career, and not treating them just as independent contractors that just come in and throw their body around for you, and like giving them health care and proper income and treatment. And so he's another one that kind of fell victim to that. And I think that's just an important tale to hit on, that a lot of pro wrestlers die young, partially because they just don't get the proper treatment that they need to sustain the career that they're trying to do for us.
Yeah. So we did, like I said, I didn't want to end on a down note. So we want to talk a little bit about what's coming up in 2024. Obviously, as we mentioned, we got a new name, new outlook, new logo, new business cards, new T-shirts, new socials as the Wrestling Archives, starting with our January episode. Let me run those down for you one more time just so you have them. WrestlingArchives.com. New Twitter is at WrestleArchives. New Instagram is _Wrestling_Archives. Facebook will be changing our names ASAP to the Wrestling Archives. And if you want to support the show, which we super appreciate, it's Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/Wrestling Archives. You can drop us the cost of a cup of coffee. It helps us upgrade our audio equipment so we sound as good as we possibly can. Helps us occasionally buy some Facebook other advertising so that more folks can find the show. We can hit all the rest of the countries for downloads. And we have a new email at wrestlingarchivespodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to get some feedback from the listeners. We'd love to feature your questions. We've featured some viewer or listener requests in the past, to review a particular show. So if you have those kinds of things, send them our way. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, Nick, if you're still listening, we miss you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, where is Nick?
We hope you're doing okay. And also along those lines, we also have a store on tpublic.com. Cool. So search for the Wrestling Archives on tpublic.com. Buy a t-shirt or a frisbee or something with our new logo on it. It's a pretty spiffy logo, if I say so myself. And I do say so myself. And that's because I made the logos.
You should be proud.
Yeah. Anyways, we got some great stuff already lined up going into 2024 here. We're going to be talking to Mr. Vince Valor, who is a guy that operates out of Buffalo Championship Wrestling up in upstate New York. Seems like a real legit guy. He seems to be suffering from an injury right now, so just trying to fill up his time with some talking. And yeah, it's going to be great to talk with him. We hope to have George on again, tell some more crazy stories, get more of his bio going for us. And also, probably the first show that we're going to review in the year is going to be Capital Combat 90, right from the DC Armory in Washington, D.C., where you might know that one as the one with RoboCop.
Hell
that is the
yes.
one where the only RoboCop shows up and with Sting. It's an insane series of spots it's unparalleled in professional wrestling, honestly. And since WWF tried to debut the Ninja Turtles as wrestlers, this one is definitely up there. So
don't forget the gobbledygooker.
Oh yeah, the gobbledygooker. So keep your ear out for those things coming up. Keep an eye on your feed, and we got some exciting stuff for 2024 going down. I'm super excited about the name change.
Yeah, me too. And if you're working in the wrestling business, you're an indie performer. We haven't talked to a woman wrestler yet. We'd love to have some women performers to come talk to us. We haven't had a manager, valet type yet. We're hoping maybe we can get somebody like Neil Sharkey from VCW to come on and talk. We're interested in sort of highlighting your stories, your perspectives, what got you into the business, what makes you tick, who you like to watch, what kind of wrestling is your bag, baby. So those are all things that we're definitely open to. So you can find us. We're easy enough, and we'll talk to literally anybody.
If Frankie the Parrot, Coco Beware's parrot, was willing to come on the show, we would have him.
He's dead.
Well, there's probably multiple Frankies out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all right. So this kind of, I think, brings us to the end of our year in review episode for 2023.
I think so. I think we're going to need to do another episode that is the wrap up of the 2023 year in review episode.
This got a little long. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But it was a busy year. We had a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
There was a lot
and we hadn't talked in a while, so we had a lot to talk about.
Seriously. We hope you all enjoyed it. If you had a favorite moment from 2023, from our show, from current wrestling, from old wrestling, favorite performer, any of that kind of stuff, drop us a line. The Wrestling Archives podcast at gmail.com. Hit us up on socials. We'd love to hear all about it. So, all right, we're going to sign off before this show actually rolls over into 2024. So for now, I'm your co-host, Tim.
And I'm your co-host, Rich.
And we will see you as the Wrestling Archives in 2024.
Happy New Year.
Bye.